But we got a lot of people before those 20, Steve, what nobody talks about. But, you know, hundreds of people. We did a good job, and you guys did a fantastic job. I want to thank every nation that helped us achieve this monumental breakthrough.
Thank you for convening this meeting under the banner of peace. Qatar reaffirms its commitment to the Board of Peace as it was committed to the very first day of the mediation efforts.
His Majesty King Mohammed VI.
Okay, let's go now to Annelle Sheline. She's joining us from Washington, D.C. and is a former U.S. State Department official and currently a research fellow in the Middle East program at the Quincy Institute for Responsible Statecraft. Annelle, thanks for being with us. So just hearing there from both the leaders of the UAE and Qatar that each will be contributing a further $1 billion to the Gaza effort.
Yes, it is obviously very important for Trump's efforts to have these countries contribute this money, although what we've previously heard from the Gulf countries is they are not interested in refinancing the reconstruction of Gaza, only to have Israel destroy it again. And at present, it is not clear how Trump would necessarily act to prevent Israel from continuing or again destroying Gaza, given that Israel has committed near daily violations of the ceasefire and has killed over 600 Palestinians since this so-called ceasefire has been put in place. So while you have this very encouraging expressions of support from various countries to rebuild Gaza, if it's only then to be destroyed again, there's really no way for Trump to guarantee that Israel won't do that unless he exerts significant pressure on Israel and makes abundantly clear that U.S. security assistance to Israel depends on Israel actually abiding by the terms of this ceasefire.
Annelle, of course, today's Board of Peace was convened with the intention of sorting out the situation in Gaza, but there has been no mention of certain things like a two-state solution. Of course, the situation with the Rafah crossing, where Israel promised that it would operate at a certain level, allowing a certain number of people to pass in and out per day, has not reached those levels. I mean, what else was missing that you saw today from these talks at the Gaza board? Sorry, Annelle, we are going to interrupt there and go live now back to DC, where Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan is speaking. Let's take a listen.
Engagement and our collective efforts. Yet the humanitarian situation remains fragile and ceasefire violations continue to occur. A prompt, coordinated and effective response is therefore essential. President Erdogan remains fully committed to Gaza's security, stabilization, and recovery. Turkey has already been providing immense amount of humanitarian assistance to Gaza. We can also contribute meaningfully to the rehabilitation of health and education sectors, as well as the training of the police force. In addition, we are prepared to provide troops to the International Stabilization Force. Mr. President, Turkey will continue to support your efforts towards a just and lasting peace. We remain convinced that the foundation of such peace is the two-state solution. Let us work towards that objective for the benefit of all peoples of the region. Thank you.
Okay, let's go now back to Annelle Sheline, former US State Department official, currently a research fellow in the Middle East program at the Quincy Institute for Responsible Statecraft. So, Annelle, I was interrupted momentarily before because we went back to the speakers at the Board of Peace, but I just wanted to ask you about what you noticed today in terms of what has been missing, in terms of what's been mentioned by Donald Trump and then subsequent speakers in regards to the rebuilding of Gaza and the alleviating of the suffering of Palestinians.
Several items are missing. I mean, in particular, as has come up before, there's a real disconnect between all these nice words about what's planned for Gaza and the reality on the ground. You heard Mike Waltz say that 4,200 trucks are getting in a week, which is completely misleading because that includes commercial trucks, and there's very little transparency about what is actually on those trucks. And I would be very suspicious of the other claims he made about claiming these significant reductions in malnutrition. And I mean, food insecurity remains completely widespread, to say nothing of the fact that Israel continues to block something as basic as tents, new tents, to allow the displaced Palestinians in Gaza to have somewhere to stay, to say nothing of the reconstruction, of actually rebuilding Gaza. Furthermore, Israel has said that it will block 37 international organizations from operating inside Gaza as of March 1st. This includes Doctors Without Borders, Refugees International, that are doing absolutely vital work. So on the one hand, you have this very rosy picture that Waltz and others are painting of how things are getting so much better in Gaza. And the reality is that is simply not the case. Then, as you had mentioned, the longer-term question of, well, what is to be done about this? The rest of the world is in consensus that international law dictates an independent state for the population, for a two-state solution. One alternative to that could perhaps be one state with equal rights for everyone within its borders. That sort of a decision would need to be left to the inhabitants, the citizens, would need to be able to come to that conclusion. But as you said, at present, there's no real discussion of how to address the long-term source of this conflict, which is the Israeli occupation that has gone on for decades and decades. And so all of this that is being discussed is based on the assumption that Palestinians will be willing to give up their right to self-determination, their decades-long efforts to obtain their rights, and instead would be willing to simply live in this so-called Gaza Riviera under heavy surveillance and essentially provide just cheap labor for this sort of Dubai-like dream of, 200 hotels along the 26 miles of coastline. I mean, it's grotesque the way you have these extremely wealthy individuals talking about their visions for Gaza and investment and all of the money that's going to come pouring in, when what should be happening here is accountability for Israel for committing genocide in Gaza and actual humanitarian aid and a real process of conflict resolution to ensure that we don't simply have Israel destroying Gaza again, which is, again, likely to occur. One other issue is this assumption that Hamas is going to disarm. Hamas did not agree to that. Trump said that they did, but this was not something that they actually agreed to. And they have been very clear that they will not give over their weapons except to a Palestinian state or some sort of Palestinian governing authority that would be taking over sort of as the authority for the Palestinian people. And so all of this idea that reconstruction or all of these glowing plans are premised on Hamas having to disarm, they've been very clear that they do not intend to do so. And as I said earlier, the real obstacle to all of this thus far has actually been Israel, which has not upheld almost any aspect of what they agreed to, whether that's letting in aid, opening the crossings, allowing humanitarian organizations, including the UN. This was in the 20-point plan. The UN was supposed to be involved, and organizations like UNRWA that Israel has been systematically trying to destroy and prevent from operating. So again, I think the most important point here is Israel remains the most important obstacle to peace, and thus far we have not seen Trump looking like he's willing to exert any sort of pressure on Israel to stop bombing Gaza, to allow an aid, to actually move forward.
Annelle Sheline, former US State Department official and research fellow in the Middle East program at the Quincy Institute for Responsible Statecraft. Thanks so much for your analysis.